Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. All right, welcome back to the Near Memo. We think this is episode 56, but we're not entirely sure.
Could also be 55. We'll have to get back to you next week with the correct
Yes.
number.
We've lost count at this point. We've done a lot of them, and they're always fun. And the point of this is to talk about search, social, and commerce with a sort of local angle on all of that. And I'm here with Mike and David as always. And it's always difficult for us to choose three topics or three-ish topics to talk about because there's so many interesting things going on. But I'm going to start off today with a lawsuit that was filed in the Northern District of California, federal court, by a Florida-based company that is called the Lime
Green or something. Yeah.
Fresh Lime. Yeah, no, Fresh Lime is JB's company.
That's the SaaS company.
Now I'm blanking on the name. Anyway, it's a small restaurant chain that is based in Florida, and they're suing Google for the online ordering button that was placed on local business profiles in approximately 2019, but tested prior to that, but sort of massively rolled out in 2019. And then subsequently, Google gave restaurants the ability to opt out and gave them a little bit of additional control over who the delivery companies were. But you click the button, go to a landing page, choose a delivery company, DoorDash, Postmates, one of the big national companies, and then they fulfill the order from the local restaurant. And a lot of people were upset by this. A lot of sort of local agencies that worked on behalf of restaurants, a lot of restaurants themselves were up in arms, feeling that Google was sort of improperly diverting traffic from what would otherwise go directly to them to these national delivery companies, and the restaurants have to pay like a 30% commission. And so there was this sort of sense that Google was pulling a kind of bait and switch, which is the language used in the complaint. And the complaint alleges a whole bunch of claims, deception. There's some appropriation of trade names and goodwill. There's a bunch of claims in the lawsuit, and they're asking for compensatory damages, which is money hypothetically lost because of this behavior, and punitive damages, which are used in situations of egregious conduct to punish the defendant if they're found to be liable. So that would be, there would be a formula, but they're asking for a multiple of the compensatory damages. So it raises some interesting questions about what Google is allowed to do with business identities and business names. But there's just a broader ethical issue, which we've talked about informally in the past, about Google doing things for local businesses or to local businesses or with local business information without getting them to opt in or asking permission. What Google did was create an opt-out after an outcry. So thoughts on that?
Sort of the way Google develops in local is they work with a singular or two very large companies. They integrate that data feed into the business profile, and they don't create an interface to it through the dashboard or any other means. They just see if it works, right? If it works, they keep it. If it doesn't, they keep it and then build an interface to it. So they have this sort of backwards way, and it ends up putting a great burden, at least this did, on people on the ground who had to deal with DoorDash or GrubHub, whoever was building the fake websites and the fake, listings of their food stuff. And it puts a burden on their business that they weren't anticipating or that they didn't agree to, because this is how Google does it. So it's sort of a self-centered development technology. I don't know if it's designed to cheat businesses, but it ends up
I'm sure Google
painful.
would never say that we were intending to cheat businesses. I'm sure Google was focused on the user experience and thought this is going to be great. For two things. They think it's going to be great for users because it creates convenience, and it's also going to be good for them as a kind of, they're doing a lot of transaction-based things, and this is part of that. And so, they think that they're creating a lot of value all the way around. The parties that are not considered in this calculus are the local restaurants. It's interesting when Google works with, they just rolled out this vehicle ads in beta, I guess, And they had some case studies in their blog post, and those are all big companies, CarMax and and a couple of others, big auto dealers. And they invite them to participate, and it's a voluntary thing. We'd like you to be a beta tester in this new program. But they don't do that to local businesses. I mean, there may be examples where they have, but by and large, they don't do that. And so they got themselves into trouble. And this is a would-be class action lawsuit. So if the class is certified, it could be every restaurant, hypothetically, in 2019, and where Google put an order button on their profile. Could be thousands and thousands and thousands of restaurants.
Yeah, I would just add, Greg, to piggyback on what you were saying earlier. I think, unfortunately, it's a long-standing pattern, as Mike said, not just to think about scale, but also I think to have product managers at Google who simply do not consider the impact of their product decisions on local businesses at all. And so, even though I don't find the motivation to streamline the user experience objectionable in any way, the fact that nobody in the room, thought to raise their hand and say, "Hey, how's the mom and pop pizza parlor, going to take this? Maybe we should at least talk to a couple of them before rolling this kind of thing out." So I think that's been a sort of systemic issue with Google in local for as long as all three of us have kind of been involved. The second thing is, I think this highlights the persistent mantra that Mike and I have been banging the drum for years, which is that your Google business profile is not your Google business profile, it is Google's, and that they will do what they want to with it. So to the extent, I realize, search is the dominant channel for a lot of businesses with respect to customer acquisition, but to the extent you can build a multi-pronged customer acquisition set of channels, I think that's to your advantage, so that you're not beholden to a single decision that a 25-year-old product manager at Google makes.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Mike. Did you? Yeah.
I have one final comment. Yeah, I want ringside seats and popcorn.
I would say that Google probably did make a conscious decision not to make this an opt-in program, just in the same way that everything is opt-out, because once you ask people to opt in, the numbers are going to be really small. They're going to be really tiny. They would have had to do a lot of education, a lot of outreach. It would have been expensive. They would have gotten limited or, very limited participation, and
but
it wouldn't have flown.
They could have gone about it in the same way that they just did the auto ads example that you just mentioned, Greg. They could have started by going to a dozen national chains with 10,000 to 20,000 locations and said, "Hey, we're going to roll this pilot out. Would you like to participate?" And that would have been a perfectly scalable test across probably 1 million locations, and just talking to maybe a dozen partners.
And they could have also simultaneously released the feature so that you could have removed the button if you wanted to.
That was like 9 months later, that the opt-out came.
Right.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.